All right, this is the new Boss, almost said Vox, Boss Katana Artist. Just picked it up from Sweetwater, so I'm gonna unbox it. I'm getting this amp. It's the new wave of modeling amps, I guess you would call it. Although I think Boss doesn't exactly advertise it that way. Advertise it as more of a kind of like a unique tone stack of its own. Although I think it is modeled after stuff. But the last modeling amp that I owned was a Vox Valvetronics, Valstate, about 15 years ago. And I wasn't crazy about it, and I've had a couple of pedals over the years that are modeling, and I couldn't deal with the diving into the menus all the time and bringing on gear. You always got to dive into the menus, and just got tired of that stuff. So I kind of got turned off by the modeling stuff through the years, even with the Kempers and I tried actually a friend of mine let me borrow his, I'm not going to be able to think of it right now, but it's like a Kemper, I'll think of it later, but it's got great effects. $1,200, $1,500 rack unit, and man, the effects were awesome. But it was the same situation trying to get, and the amp models were all beautiful. You could get a bunch of them, almost any amp you could think of. It was all great. The problem with that was, going on a gig, man, you want to tweak all the time, and I'm just not into that. So I got a bunch of tube amps back there. I've got a Marshall SV20 that I just bought about a year ago, a little more than a year ago. It's a tone machine. It's tube, all tube, head. So I bought the head. I've got some great speakers. I've got a Marshall JVM 205H, which is a 50 watts all tube amp from England, Marshall from England. So I've got two Marshall amps that build tone monsters. We've got a Vox AC15 that's currently needs some work. Fender Twin Reverb 1969. It's just been rebuilt. Orange Tiny Terror, which is a 15 watt all tube amp, and then I have a Mesa 525. That's not mine, actually. It's right here. It's for a good friend of mine. Just let me use it in the studio here. And all of them, man, they got their own thing. I love them in their own way. But of course, it'd be nice to have an amp that kind of does all of those well. So I did some research, and I bought this. Sight unseen, I have not gone to a store and played one. But I did go online. And actually, I was going to get the 100 watt head, but they didn't have that at Sweetwater, and I'm kind of an impulsive son of a gun, and they did have this one, and it's a combo. And I'm not really crazy about combos, man. I'm not. Last time on a combo amp was a Fender Hot Rod Deluxe with a 40 watt amp. All tubes. The problem with that one was I just never could find a sweet spot. It was either too soft or too loud. There was like this, millimeter of a turn on the volume that got it way too loud, or it was way too soft. So I just got tired of that. Anyway, entering the Boss Katana Artist. It's a little heavier than I thought it might be. Got a Wazacraft speaker, I'm not seeing it. Based on a greenback, probably more like a creamback because it's a high-powered greenback. You can see It's green. Yeah, it should be green. And this is what it looks like from the front. Sexy looking amp, man. So I'm gonna try it out. See how this works. So this is my uniquely into the new age of modeling amps, the Vox Katana. This is introducing the Vox Katana Artist MKII. I kind of explained why I bought this amp before, but it's got the Wazacraft speaker based on a green back. It's got a green back. You know, I said it's better built than the standard Katanas. Reasonably inexpensive for what it does, and you know I've done a lot of research on these, so that's quite a lot. But this is it, and I'm going to try to. I do have the GAC or whatever it is foot switch. I did get that goes with this, or you know, helps expand the capabilities here. So now what's gonna happen for me is I'm gonna go from bringing either a Marshall or a Mesa or a Vox. Actually, the Vox is the only combo I've got with a two pedal boards and a bunch of wires for the for the effects send and return. Plugging that into my time-based delay pedals and reverb, going from all of that to like this amp, a wire, and a foot switch. So we're gonna see, man. I'm kind of excited to see how it works, and you know, I'll do a little demo on that once I get it all set up. Katana Artist. Here I am with the Vox Katana MKII Artist. It's I did an unboxing yesterday, so you saw that. I wanted to reiterate there are two reasons why I bought this. Obviously, one is to use in the studio here, and I do have it actually. You don't see a mic. I'm using a line out because I wanna illustrate how that works. I've got a mic right here on my voice, so that's going to pick up some of the ambience of the room. So for live performance, I want to go through why I like this amp. I did work with it for a couple hours last evening to kind of get used to what, dial in a few things that I like. So I'm going to do three things with three different guitars. First, I'm using this Strat, this Fender Eric Clapton Strat. It's a deluxe Strat. It's not the $5,000 version. There's a $2,000 version, and it's got the mid-range boost on it, so it's got active, silent, or quiet pickups. And what I want to illustrate the most, though, is the fact that this particular amp does a beautiful job on cleaning up when you work with just the guitar volume. So I found this one particular setting that I think I'm going to like a lot. It's crunch with the variation switch in. Not going to get into all the what all these amp models do. You can go check that. A lot of YouTube stuff on that. I did the research myself, but I'm using this for a live gig. So, and for the studio. For the live gig, I want to be able to dial in a setting and then pretty much leave it there until maybe I plug in a different guitar, or maybe there's a song that calls for something a little more crunch or maybe even cleaner. I want to just be able to quickly go between the amps. They're basically 4 amps plus an acoustic setting on this with the variation, which makes 8 amps plus 2 acoustic settings. So now I have it on the crunch with the variation setting in. As you can see, I've got the gain kind of cranked. The volume is wide open, the master volume. And the volume here is at 12 o'clock. And then I have it on a 1/2 watt setting. So this is nice and clean. I've got the guitar volume on about 4. beautifully. So I can go between this. That's a 1/2 watt. So it's loud. It's actually, it's mind-blowing loud at a 1/2 watt. So I'm going to demonstrate too what's cool about this. Mostly you're listening to the line out. So I'm going to switch this to standby. And it's going to silence the speaker. But you're still hearing the amp, hearing my voice. Guitar strings, but you're not hearing the speaker. So I'm going to do the same thing basically. So I'm not hearing it in here at all, but that's what it does. So I'm going to turn the back on to 1/2 watt so I can monitor what I'm doing. So yeah, man, what I like about this is the dedicated knobs to everything. The last time I tried a modeling amp was, I don't know, 15 years ago. I had a Vox Valvetronics or Valve State. I'm not sure what they called it. Valvetronics, I think. Just a little modeling amp and had, 8 or 10 amp models. It was pretty uninspiring for me. And I had a couple of pedals that I've used over the years. And I hated the idea of bringing that on a gig, and then all of a sudden, man, you switch to something. You sounded great when you were practicing with it, and then you get on a gig, and it's too, it sucked, or the effects were too much, and you had to go digging in and turn stuff. I don't want to deal with that. And here, I want to just dial in a tone. This is nice and clean. I could use this on country songs or on the you use this on country song. Or, little rock song. The same setting, just adjusting the volume on the guitar. So that's pretty cool. And then there's the effects. Now there's a switch here that says panel, and that lets you just use it as you would use one of these amps. And I'm going to get to these amps here in a second. But so this foot switch. Cool little foot switch. It doesn't come with it. It's a $130 option. But I've got it set to effects now, so I can turn reverb on. And the reverbs are beautiful. There's 3 settings. Here you can go between 3 reverbs or delay. Still kind of clean, and then modulation. And even a boost. So let's say I want to take a solo. I can add a little hair here. half a watt. So it works like a live amp. Now you can see I've got this Tiny Terror, this Marshall SV20, and this Marshall JVM 205, and I've got a behind me. I'm not sure it's in the camera, but I've got a Gibson Les Paul Jr. amplifier. It's a 5-watt all tube. All of these are tube amps. My go-to amp has been this SV20. It's a little badass. It's a rock and roll machine. It's a 4-holer. I'm not going to get into this either because you can YouTube what a SV20 Marshall SV20 is, but it's 20 watts, switchable to 5 watts. It does not have a master volume. It's got a volume, 2 volumes actually. And the 4-holer is researched that too, but I do have the channels jumped so I can blend between these 2 volume knobs. The issue with this amp is that if you have it on 2, like way down here, it's really almost as loud as if you put it on 7, which tends to be the sweet spot for these amps. The difference is that when you put it on 7, and you can kind of do what I'm doing here, you turn the guitar volume below, it's going to clean up, and you turn the volume up, it's going to crunch up. This one might crunch up a little more than that one's set to, but I'm not sure that this one cleans up quite as nicely as this does. It's real close. But this, this is a Marshall, and it's meant to play rock and roll. Yeah, you can do. I've seen country guys with these amps, jazz guys, but typically this is a rock and roll machine, man, and it does rock and roll beautifully. It's got that great Marshall vibe, that vintage Marshall vibe. That's why I bought this amp. This is a JVM 205, another Marshall, all 2 Marshall, made in England. Both of these are made in England. And this is a beast, man. This thing weighs more than this. It's a 50-pound head. Big transformers. As you can see, it's got 1 input and 2 channels and 3 variations on each channel. But the variations are just Marshall variations. Just gain stage variations. So you can go from real clean with this channel to mild crunch to pretty good crunch, and then in this section is just overdrive for days, metal zone. So again, this is a Marshall that's made for rock and roll, and I've got the Fender Twin reverb down here. It's a 1969. It's the original amp. It's been reworked. Just had my brother owned it for 30 years. I bought this originally in 1969, and my brother wound up with it, and he had it reworked by a guitar master or amp master in Chicago. And that's clean wise, man. You just can't beat that. I'm not crazy about it when you try to turn it up and try to get some overdrive stuff from it. Then I got this Gibson amp, which is out of the camera, which is a 5-watt tube amp, one power amp tube, 1 preamp tube, and 1 volume. No tone or anything, just volume knob. But for singing solos that won't blow you out the room, man, this thing's beautiful. And over there I've got, that you can't see either, is a Vox AC-15, which, it's got its own beautiful thing. And a Mesa 525 Express, I think, which is on loan to my studio from a good friend of mine, Wayne Buznell. And it's a beautiful amp, man. It's got like 4 different stages you can go: clean, crunch, blues, and like metal. So it's a real versatile amp. All tubes. All of these amps are tubes. And what all these tube amps have in common is the fact that you can go from nice and clean, you turn the guitar volume down like this, to crunchy like this. So I saw that about this Katana artist. Well, actually, all the Katanas do it. And the difference between this artist and the other Katanas is, well, one has got a Wazacraft speaker in it. It's in a Celestion greenback inspired speaker, but it's 100-watt. And it's got some extra cabinet resonation stuff. I've got it set to vintage, I believe, over there. I'm not going to get much into that. And of course, it's got a USB output. You can plug it into a computer, and I probably will at some point, because the one thing Boss didn't include, and I wish they would in future releases, and if anyone from Boss is watching this, I think it would be totally beneficial, is to have, as one of these effects, the noise gate. There is a noise gate that you can include, but you've got to plug it in to the computer and set it. So I'm not crazy about that part. So it does have effect send and returns on it on the back, so you can actually insert a noise gate there. I'm sure that would work. But the idea, man, is that when I brought this SV20 or this JVM or the Tiny Terra or the Mesa or the Vox to a gig, I had a pedal board that I have down here, which has 6 pedals plus a power supply. And then I've got another pedal board that's got all my time-based pedals on it, reverb, chorus, and delay. Then there's wires that go from that to the send and return on here. So here, in this case, I'm going to eliminate, for a live gig, I'm going to have an amp and a pedal. And, my hope for this was that it would, at least tone-wise, hang with these amps. And so far, it is. It's hanging. It's hanging beautifully. I mean, again, man, I'm on a crunch setting with the amplifier variation in, and it's a beautiful clean sound with just the volume on this Fender Strat at 3. And I can kind of get in between. Or even go into, So far so good. So I'm going to try a Les Paul next, and I'll just go through a little bit of how that works on this. And again, man, this whole demonstration is how this would work in a live setting. You didn't see me go here and switch all kind of stuff, and I don't want to do that when I go on the gigs. So far so good. Next will be a Les Paul. All right, this is part 2. Like I said, I do. Using a Les Paul Custom, so 1980s Les Paul Custom, thin, so it's light. It's a typical Les Paul. Still in the half a watt setting, 0.5 watts, and it's shockingly loud. So same as with the Strat, if I switch guitars on a gig, aside from some tweaks, maybe, it's Les Paul, so I want a little more high end, or whatever. I'm not going to change the gain. So this is the amp, aside from me just adjusting the treble up slightly, is set just exactly like the Fender Air Clap guitar. So this is typical Les Paul. Delay. Another reverb too. This is a Les Paul, so you So, again, crunch setting on the variation, and I could take this to a whole new level of crunch by going to the lead or the brown. I'll show you real quick. Lead. So, yeah. And that's without changing any of the other stuff or the brown. So it goes, you know, it'll go way out there. So John Fogerty used a Les Paul in that song. So sounds just like it, right? So that's this amp with a Les Paul plug into it. And I do have a pedal board down here, but I think I went through this. I'm not using the pedals except for the tuner. I have the noise gate on, but you know, the amp actually works beautifully with pedals. This is a Tumnus, a Wampler Tumnus. And this is a OCD, full tone OCD. And I've got a gravity compressor on here. It hangs on for nicely. So it takes pedals nicely, which was another thing that I read about it and was pretty happy to know. So next will be an acoustic. Katana artist with an acoustic guitar. In this case, I'm using Ovation Legend. Have the EQ set flat, volume all the way up so I can control it. Again, on 0.5 watts. So I have changed it to acoustic, and I have dialed in the EQ like I normally would do, but nothing else changed. So I have a little reverb on it. But it sounds actually pretty damn great for an acoustic, for like a typical electric guitar amp that's got an acoustic setting on it. This but the variation switch is slightly darker or warmer, I would say, which is a little more low end, less sparkle on the top. Which is nice. Either way, I could live with either one on. But it sounds like an acoustic guitar. And of course, you can do I love this hands-on thing. I can turn the reverb up if I want with my hands. I ain't got to go pressing buttons, digging through a menu. So, you know, I don't know that you could ask for really better than that. Maybe a dedicated acoustic guitar amp, maybe. But this speaker seems to deal with acoustic beautifully. So another reason why for a live gig, I was sold on this particular amp. It's got an acoustic guitar amp built into it. So, and again, you can do the thing where I'm going to turn the speaker off. I'll have it on standby. You're not hearing anything out of the speaker, but you are hearing it from the line out. So the cool thing about this is you can adjust like you can with the electrics, the house or the monitors without being, without the consideration of what's coming out of here or being influenced by what's coming out of the speaker. So So you could do, you know, adjust your monitors and mains, and then turn this back on. Of course, you probably want to adjust this first, because if any changes on the EQ here is going to affect the mains. But after you get your sound dialed in here, you can switch this to standby and then EQ or whatever the mains like you like. So this is what, you know, everything so far is the reason I bought this amp. Turn this back on, but there's no doubt, I haven't found any downsides except for maybe a tuner, which I'm going to have to bring to a gig. I could use a Snark, I prefer. I've got a Peterson tuner on this pedal board, which is a great tuner. Accurate. And, but besides that, I cannot find anything that I'm slightly discouraged about of this. It reacts like these amps. You know, a gig will tell. And I haven't played a gig, as we know. It's early August right now, 6th of August. And the human malware has got gigs ground to a halt. And I'm like everybody else with that. So there are no gigs. But I am using this in the studio. And I have actually last evening, I tried it on a couple of tracks, a couple of parts, just to see from the line output. And it does have a speaker out, 2 speaker outs actually. So the way I use these amps in the studio here is I don't get in the same room with this. When I crank these up, I don't want to be in the same room. So I've got speakers upstairs. I've got 2 orange PPC 112 cabs up there. One has a Celestion V30 and one has a Celestion Creamback 65. They're both about the same power rating. I think the V30 60 watts and the Creamback 65 watts. And I've got this Marshall 1936, which is a 120 watt cab. But, you know, I plug these, I've got speaker cables run upstairs, and I plug this in here so I can crank the crap out of this, and my hearing doesn't suffer for it. I can do the same with this. I can actually plug in the Creamback, let's say, or the V30 up there, get a different voicing, and use that, or mic this and mic those upstairs, and have 2 different speaker tones, you know, going on. So there's a lot of cool stuff about this, man. So far so good. I'm digging the Boss Artist Katana Mark II. I'm digging it.